The first laugh came from Logan Rice, though he tried to turn it into a cough. Caitlin Lawrence looked down at the folder in her lap. The paper inside listed one condemned building, one narrow strip of ground, and one county assessment of $6. Her cousin leaned toward his mother. $6? Is that even worth putting in a will? Christine pressed her lips together, but she was smiling. Derek didn't bother hiding his. Caitlin sat at the far end of the polished conference table in Van Buren, holding a brass key that looked newer than the property it belonged to. Outside the law office windows, rain moved across the parking lot in thin gray lines. Everyone else had arrived in clean cars and heavy winter coats. Caitlin's coat still smelled faintly of fryer grease from the lunch shift she'd worked the day before. The attorney cleared his throat. The assessed value doesn't necessarily reflect market value. Derek reached over and pulled the property sheet closer. It says the building is condemned. No plumbing, no electrical service, and no legal road access. I can read, Caitlin said. I know you can. I'm just making sure you understand what Dad left you. Dad, he said. Not her grandfather, not Richard. Dad, as if the dead man belonged more to Derek even now. The attorney took the paper back. The property is the former Lee Creek tollkeeper's house and its attached charter frontage. The structure dates to 1891. Logan laughed again. This time he didn't disguise it. A $6 toll house, he said. Grandpa really had a sense of humor. Christine touched her son's wrist. That's enough? But then she looked at Caitlin with the careful sympathy she used when other people were watching. There may be some historical value, she said. You never know. Derek pushed his chair back. There's no road to it unless you cross orchard property. The county stopped maintaining that trail years ago. Then how am I supposed to get there? Caitlin asked. You can walk. The attorney glanced at Derek. Access questions should be handled separately. There's no question, Derek said. It's landlocked. Caitlin closed the folder. Across the table, her uncle had received Lawrence Orchards, the farmhouse, the packing shed, the equipment barns, and the operating company Richard Lawrence had spent most of his life building. Christine had received the investment accounts, 2 rental houses, and the balance from a land sale near Alma. There were details and percentages, but the shape of it was simple. Richard's surviving son took the family business. His daughter took the liquid assets. His granddaughter took a condemned toll house worth $6. The attorney slid a receipt toward her. I'll need your signature acknowledging delivery of the key and property documents. Caitlin signed. The pen scratched loudly in the room. Nobody spoke until she placed it back on the table. Derek gathered his copies of the will. You should probably let me handle the taxes on that parcel until you figure out what you're doing. The taxes on $6? Logan said. Christine gave him another warning look, though she had laughed too. Caitlin had heard it. A quick breath through the nose, gone almost before it began. Caitlin stood and put the key in her coat pocket. What are you going to do with it? Christine asked. I'm going to look at it. Derek's expression changed a little. Today? It belongs to me today, doesn't it? It belonged to you the moment Dad died, technically. Then I'm going to look at my house. Logan leaned back in his chair. Take a flashlight. She walked out before anyone could offer more advice. 3 weeks earlier, Richard Lawrence had died on the concrete floor beside the sorting line at Lawrence Orchards. The ambulance arrived quickly, but there was nothing anyone could do. He'd been checking a belt that kept slipping off its guide. That was the kind of thing he still did himself, even at 78, because asking someone else took longer. Caitlin learned about his death from Derek. She'd been standing in the stockroom of a bakery near downtown Van Buren, counting paper cups, when her phone rang. Derek hadn't called her in almost a year. She knew before answering that somebody was dead. Your grandfather had a heart attack, he said. She sat down on an unopened box of napkins. Where is he? He's gone, Caitlin. The stockroom door had been open. Through it, she could hear the mixer turning and the front bell ringing whenever someone entered. Ordinary sounds kept going while she held the phone to her ear. Was he alone? No. Isaiah was there. Did he say anything? Derek paused. No. It was a small silence, but Caitlin knew her uncle. He used silence when he wanted the other person to stop asking. She called Isaiah Fisher as soon as Derek hung up. Isaiah had worked at Lawrence Orchards for 32 years. He ran crews during harvest, fixed anything with an engine, and kept a separate equipment repair shop behind his own house. He answered after several rings. Caitlin, were you with him? "I was. What happened?" "He said the belt was pulling wrong. I told him I'd shut the line down. He went over there before I could get to the switch." Isaiah's voice sounded rough and far away. "Did he say anything?" "He said your name." Caitlin pressed one hand against her mouth. "What did he say?" "He said, 'Call Caitlin.'" Then he went down. She remained on the box of napkins until her manager found her. By then, she'd stopped crying. Her manager drove her to the orchard because Caitlin's old car had been making a grinding noise near the front wheel, and neither of them trusted it on the highway. Derek was standing outside the packing shed when they arrived. He thanked the manager without asking her name. Then he told Caitlin the funeral arrangements were being handled. Handled was a word Derek liked. It meant the decision had already been made. The funeral was held 4 days later. Caitlin sat behind Christine and Logan, though the front pew had enough space for her. Christine's purse occupied the open place beside her until the service began. Afterward, people gathered at the farmhouse with slow cookers and foil-covered trays. Caitlin stood near the kitchen counter, while neighbors told Derek what a good man Richard had been. Christine accepted condolences as if she'd organized the weather. Nobody asked Caitlin to stay when the dishes were cleared. Richard had loved her. She knew that. The trouble was that he had loved her quietly inside a family that did everything else out loud. He remembered her birthday. He brought peaches to her apartment in July and jars of apple butter in the fall. When her car battery died, he appeared with jumper cables before she finished asking for help. He once sat through an entire afternoon at the motor vehicle office because she needed proof of residence and had brought the wrong envelope. But when Derek excluded her from an orchard Christmas dinner, Richard said there must have been confusion. When Christine told her the farmhouse had no room for her after a rent increase forced her from her first apartment, Richard paid for a motel instead of telling his daughter to move a stack of boxes out of the spare bedroom. When family photographs were taken, he sometimes noticed Caitlin standing behind everyone. Sometimes he didn't. She had spent years trying to understand that kind of love. It was real. It was also easy for stronger people to step around. Her father, Michael Lawrence, had died 16 years before Richard. The accident happened at the orchard during an August morning, so hot the metal door handles burned bare hands. Michael was working near a hydraulic lift when a support failed. By the time Caitlin understood that he wasn't coming home, Derek had already moved into his office. After Michael's funeral, Christine began speaking about Caitlin as though she were a problem Richard would eventually solve. Where is she staying? Who's taking care of her things? What's the plan? There was always a plan. It was simply never Caitlin's. She was raised mostly by her mother's older sister in Fort Smith. Her mother had left Arkansas years earlier and kept in touch through occasional calls that became shorter over time. Caitlin still spent holidays with the Lawrences, but she entered through the side door and waited for someone to tell her where to sit. Derek's children had grown and moved out before Caitlin finished community college. Christine's son, Logan, was only 2 years older than she was, but he carried himself like a senior member of the family. He worked in property management and enjoyed explaining contracts to people who hadn't asked. At Christmas, Logan received an envelope from Richard with a check inside. Caitlin received one too, usually for the same amount. That was Richard's idea of fairness. He didn't seem to notice that Logan also had a position arranged for him through Christine, a paid-off truck from Derek, and a key to the farmhouse. Caitlin had a bakery job, an unreliable car, and a month-to-month room above a closed beauty shop. The room had one window, a hot plate, and a shower that turned cold whenever the downstairs tenant ran water. The building had been sold in January. Her new landlord gave her until the end of February to leave so he could renovate. She hadn't told the family. She didn't want to watch Christine make that concerned face again. So, when the will reading ended and Derek told her to walk to the property, Caitlin did. She drove west along Lee Creek Toll Road, with the brass key in her pocket and the folder on the passenger seat. Rain ticked against the windshield. Her front wheel made the grinding sound whenever she slowed. Lawrence orchards spread along both sides of the road. Bare peach trees stood in straight dark rows. The apple blocks climbed the lower hills beyond them. Richard's farmhouse sat back from the road. White siding, green roof, smoke rising from the chimney. Derek's truck was already parked outside. Caitlin kept driving. She had seen the toll house before, though she'd never known the family owned it. Everyone around Lee Creek had seen it. It stood beyond a sagging wire fence near the old crossing, hidden most of the year by vines and cedar growth. People called it the Toll Shack. She pulled onto a patch of gravel near a locked orchard gate. A faded sign warned against trespassing. Derek had given her no gate key. She tried calling him. It rang twice before going to voicemail. Caitlin looked at the muddy trail beyond the gate. Then she took the folder, put the brass key in her jeans pocket, and climbed over. The rain had softened to a mist. Water gathered on the shoulders of her coat. The trail followed the fence for a while, then dipped toward the creek. Dead grass caught around her boots. She passed an abandoned irrigation pipe and a stack of rotting pallets. The toll house appeared slowly through the cedars. It was smaller than she remembered. One room, perhaps, with a narrow porch leaning toward the ground. Gray boards showed through peeling white paint. Half the roof had been patched with corrugated metal. The chimney tilted slightly away from the building. A cottonwood limb rested across the back corner. Caitlin stopped several yards away. "This is ridiculous," she said aloud. There was nobody to hear her. The $6 assessment had seemed cruel in the attorney's office. Standing in front of the building, it seemed generous. She stepped onto the porch. The boards shifted beneath her weight. One bent far enough to show black space below, and she jumped back. The front door had swollen inside its frame. She tried the key. It entered the lock, but wouldn't turn. Of course. She pressed her shoulder against the door. Nothing moved. She tried again, harder. The wood gave with a wet tearing sound, and the door opened 6 inches before catching on something inside. Caitlin squeezed through sideways. The smell met her first. Damp wood, old leaves, and the sour trace of animals. Light came through a broken window covered with wire mesh. A rusted stove sat in one corner. There was a narrow table, one chair without a seat, and several feed sacks piled against the wall. Something moved near her foot. Caitlin backed into the door. A field mouse ran beneath the stove. She let out the breath she'd been holding. "You can have it." Rainwater had stained the ceiling. A section of plaster lay on the floor in pale chunks. The boards beneath it were soft enough to mark with her boot. Near the back wall, somebody had placed a metal bucket beneath a leak. The bucket had rusted through, leaving a brown ring around a little pile of wet leaves. She opened the folder and checked the property sketch. The lot was shaped like a long, uneven ribbon. It began near the old road and ran beside the creek before narrowing against orchard land. The building sat close to the front edge. A handwritten notation from the county inspector ran across the bottom. Unsafe for occupancy. Access unresolved. Removal recommended. Caitlin folded the page again. Her phone rang. It was Christine. "Did you make it out there?" her aunt asked. "I'm inside." "You went alone?" "Yes, that porch isn't safe." "You've been here?" "Years ago. Your grandfather used to store things there." "What things?" "I don't know. Old tools, orchard junk." Caitlin looked around. The room had been mostly emptied. Christine lowered her voice. "Listen, I hope you're not taking what happened in that office personally." "What part?" "The laughter. Logan shouldn't have done that. You laughed too." "I did not." Caitlin brushed plaster dust from the table with 2 fingers. "I heard you." Christine was quiet for a moment. "Well, it was an awkward situation. People react badly when they're uncomfortable. What was everyone uncomfortable about? The value? The condition? Your grandfather's choice. My grandfather's dead. You can say it was a bad choice. I'm not saying that. You're calling because you think I am." Christine released a slow breath. "I'm calling because you shouldn't put money into that place. You don't have the money to waste." Caitlin walked to the broken window. Through the mesh, she could see the creek moving brown beneath the trees. "What do you think I should do? Let Derek fold it back into the orchard. He can have the structure removed. Why would he want $6 of land? He doesn't want it. It would simplify the boundary." The answer came too smoothly. Christine had already discussed it with him. Caitlin felt the brass key in her pocket. "I just got here, and you've seen it. That was what you wanted." "No, I wanted to know why Grandpa left it to me." "Caitlin, sometimes a thing in a will is just a thing in a will. Then Derek can wait." She ended the call. A cold drop of water struck the back of her neck. Caitlin moved beneath the soundest part of the ceiling and listened to the rain. She had less than 3 weeks before she had to leave her rented room. Her savings would cover a deposit somewhere cheap, if her car didn't need a new wheel bearing first. The toll house had no electricity, no bathroom, and at least 3 visible holes large enough to admit weather, but it belonged to her. That fact was small, almost foolish, yet it settled her breathing. She walked the room again, more carefully this time. The stove might be usable. The chimney needed checking. the broken window could be covered. A hand pump stood outside near the back corner, though she had no idea whether the well was safe. The floor nearest the front door felt firm. She crouched to inspect the threshold. The sill was dark with rot along one edge, but the center looked oddly solid. Newer nails had been driven into older wood. Not new exactly, just newer than everything around them. Caitlin pressed her thumb against the seam. The board didn't move. A truck engine sounded beyond the trees. She stood quickly expecting Derek. Instead, an old blue service truck came along the muddy trail and stopped near the porch. Isaiah Fisher climbed out wearing brown coveralls and a canvas jacket. He took one look at the roof, then at Caitlin in the doorway. "You shouldn't stand there," he said. "Everyone keeps saying that. Because the porch is coming loose from the foundation." He opened the truck bed and removed a sheet of plywood. "How did you get through the gate?" she asked. "I have a key. Derek told me to walk." "That sounds like Derek." Isaiah carried the plywood toward the porch. Caitlin stepped outside and helped him angle it across the weakest boards. "Did my grandfather ask you to come here?" she said. Isaiah stopped. For one brief second, he looked toward the back of the property instead of at her. "Not today," he said. "What does that mean?" "It means he asked me plenty of things before he died." "About this house?" Isaiah set the plywood down. "Some." "What things?" "First thing he asked was that I keep receipts." Caitlin waited. Isaiah rubbed rain from his forehead with the back of his hand. "He owed me for materials," he said. "Lumber, roofing, hardware, a few other things. I bought them over the years because he wanted the purchases kept separate from orchard accounts." "For this?" Isaiah looked at the condemned toll house. Not all of it. Caitlin watched him return to the truck. He pulled out a pry bar, a hammer, and a red metal toolbox worn silver at the corners. What else was he working on? Isaiah closed the truck bed. "That's a fair question." "Are you going to answer it?" "Not until I know what he left you. The house. This strip of land." $6. "I heard about the $6. Did everyone hear?" "Logan sent a picture of the assessment around before you left the attorney's parking lot." Caitlin stared at him. Isaiah's mouth tightened. That young man has never understood the difference between being quick and being useful. He stepped onto the plywood and tested it with his weight. "This will get you through the door without breaking an ankle. After that, we need to cover the window and see what the roof's doing." "We? You can't stay here tonight as it is." Caitlin hadn't said she planned to. Isaiah looked at the folder tucked beneath her arm, then toward the trail behind them. "Do you have somewhere else?" She could have lied. She was good at it when the question was asked kindly. "My room's gone at the end of the month." He nodded once. He didn't offer pity or tell her Richard would have hated that. He picked up the toolbox and carried it inside. Caitlin followed him. Isaiah examined the broken window while she held the flashlight from her phone. He measured the opening, cut a piece of plywood beside the truck, then screwed it across the frame. He worked with the speed of someone who already knew where the wall studs were. "You've repaired this place before," Caitlin said. "A long time ago." "With Grandpa?" "Sometimes. Why?" "He said old buildings lasted when people gave them a reason." "That sounds like him." "No, it doesn't." Caitlin looked at Isaiah. He gave the screw another turn. "That sounds like something people say after a man dies. Richard would have said tearing it down cost more than patching it." She smiled before she meant to. Isaiah noticed, though he kept working, they covered the worst leak with a tarp before dusk. He checked the chimney and told her not to light the stove until he cleaned the flue. The hand pump brought up brown water at first, then clear, though he warned her not to drink it before testing. When they reached the front door, Isaiah rested one boot beside the rotted sill. "This has to come out," he said. "I noticed the seam." He crouched and ran a finger over the line in the wood. The quiet around him changed. Caitlin saw it happen. "What?" she asked. Isaiah took out his pocket knife and scraped dirt from one of the nail heads. The metal beneath was dull but not deeply rusted. "Did you do this?" "No." "Did Grandpa?" Isaiah looked at the threshold for a long time. "I never saw him replace it." "That isn't what I asked." "No," Isaiah said. "It isn't." He stood and handed her the flashlight. "We'll need daylight to lift it without ruining what's underneath." "What do you think is underneath?" "Probably rot." "Probably." He gathered his tools, avoiding her eyes. Caitlin shone the light along the narrow seam. The sill was too thick for the frame around it. One end had been fitted with unusual care, almost as if the rotted surface were hiding a better piece of work. Outside, The last light faded over Lee Creek. Her uncle's orchard stood between her and the road. Her family believed Richard had left her a joke, and until that moment, she had nearly believed it too. Then Isaiah placed his hand on the doorframe and said, very quietly, "Your grandfather didn't do anything to this place by accident." Caitlin kept the light on the sill. "Then help me open it. Tomorrow." "You just said he didn't do anything by accident. I also said we need daylight." "I have a flashlight. You have a phone with 20% battery. 18. Isaiah picked up the toolbox. "There's a motel by the interstate. I can't pay for a motel every night, just tonight." And then he looked around the room. The plywood over the window had stopped the wind, but rain still tapped into the rusted bucket. The tarp on the roof wouldn't hold through a hard storm. The front door stood open because the swollen wood no longer fit its frame. "Then you make a decision in daylight," he said. Caitlin understood what he meant. People made expensive promises after dark. They mistook exhaustion for courage and fear for good sense. By morning, the room might look less like a home and more like the reason it had been condemned. She stepped onto the porch. What did the materials cost? Isaiah locked his toolbox. "Which materials?" "The ones Grandpa didn't pay you for." "I didn't say he never paid me. You said he owed you." "He did. How much?" Isaiah walked toward his truck without answering. Caitlin followed him along the plywood. "How much, Isaiah?" He stopped beside the driver's door. "A little under 4,000. She stared at him. "That's lumber, roofing tin, windows, electrical supplies, fasteners, and fuel over a long time." "For this building?" "Some of it." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." "Then what was the rest for?" "I need to go close my shop." "You have work tonight?" "I have a transmission spread across a bench and a customer who needs his truck by Friday. This isn't the only thing I do." The answer embarrassed her, which may have been his intention. Isaiah had given her half a day and a sheet of plywood without being asked. He had his own bills, his own work, and nearly $4,000 tied up in a dead man's unexplained project. "I'm sorry," she said. "You don't need to be sorry. You need somewhere dry." He reached into the truck and brought out a folded wool blanket. It smelled faintly of engine oil. "I keep it behind the seat. I'll bring it back." "I know." He also handed her a small battery lantern and a plastic sack containing 2 bottles of water, crackers, and a packet of sliced cheese. Caitlin accepted them reluctantly. "Do you keep dinner behind your seat too?" "Sometimes lunch becomes dinner. Will you come back in the morning?" Isaiah looked toward the toll house. "If that porch is still standing." "Come back even if it isn't." He nodded. After he left, Caitlin sat in her car with the heater running. She charged her phone from the dashboard and ate half the crackers. Mud covered the toes of her boots. Plaster dust streaked both sleeves of her coat. Her room above the beauty shop was 20 minutes away. She could sleep there. She still had a mattress, dishes, and enough hot water for a quick shower if the downstairs tenant wasn't washing clothes. She could also go back in the morning and find that Derek had locked the gate or removed the sill, or decided the condemned structure was dangerous enough to demolish immediately. That thought should have seemed unreasonable. Derek had laughed at the property. Christine had called it worthless. Neither had any reason to care what Caitlin did with it. Christine had also called within an hour of the will reading and suggested giving it back. Caitlin turned off the engine. She carried the blanket and lantern inside, then dragged the chair frame against the door to hold it closed. It wasn't much of a barrier. Anyone who wanted to enter could push through the rotten wood beside the lock. The floor near the stove was dry. She spread the blanket there and used the folder as a pillow until its hard corners bothered her. Then she placed it under her coat instead. Sleep came in short pieces. A branch scraped the metal roof. Water struck the bucket. Once, something moved beneath the floor, and Caitlin sat up with the lantern held in both hands. Nothing entered the room. Close to midnight, headlights moved between the trees. She rose and went to the broken edge of the plywood window. A vehicle stopped on the trail, but didn't come closer. Its lights remained there for perhaps half a minute. Then they turned and disappeared. Caitlin called Derek. He answered on the 4th ring. "What is it? Were you just out here?" "Out where?" "The toll house." "No." "Did you send somebody? At midnight?" "No." She listened to the background. A television was playing near him. "Did Logan?" "How would I know what Logan's doing?" "You could ask." Derek sighed. "You're not staying in that building. I am tonight. That structure is condemned. It was condemned when you let me inherit it. I didn't write the will. No, you just laughed at it. I didn't call you to that office to argue. You didn't call me at all. The attorney did. Another silence. Go home, Caitlin. This is what Grandpa left me. It isn't a home. She looked at the rusted stove and the sagging ceiling. Then, where is home, Derek? He didn't answer quickly enough. Caitlin ended the call. The headlights didn't return. She lay down again but remained awake until the rain stopped. At first light, the toll house looked worse. Cold gray light showed every stain in the walls. Damp had darkened the floorboards near the back corner. A line of ants traveled through a crack beside the stove. Her shoulder hurt from sleeping on the floor. She went outside and washed her face with bottled water. The creek had risen overnight. It moved fast beside the trees, carrying leaves and small branches. Beyond it, the orchard rows faded into morning fog. Caitlin stood on the plywood and looked at the front step. The porch had not fallen. The roof still leaned. The house remained exactly what it had been the night before. She took out her phone and called her manager. I need today off. You all right? No, but I'm not sick. Then what's going on? Caitlin looked at the toll house. My grandfather left me a property. The one from the funeral? Yes. Is it a house? Technically. Her manager waited. Caitlin had never missed a shift without warning. She had covered weekends, holidays, and 2 Christmas mornings. She knew that reliability was the main reason she still had the job. I can come in if you can't cover me, she said. I can cover you. I need you tomorrow at 5. I'll be there. When the call ended, Caitlin opened the folder again. The attorney's business card was clipped to the inside. She dialed his number next. His assistant answered, then transferred her. Caitlin, he said, is something wrong? I need to know exactly when I can record the property in my name. The personal representative has to complete a distribution deed. That may take several weeks. Who's the personal representative? Your uncle. Of course he was. Can Derek take the property back before that happens? Not without your consent or a court order. The will is clear. What if he says the building is unsafe? The condition was known when Richard signed the will. What if he tears it down? There was a pause. He shouldn't alter specifically devised property. Has he threatened to? No. Then I wouldn't assume he intends to. Caitlin looked at the strange seam beneath the front door. I want a written copy of every page that mentions this parcel. You received the relevant pages yesterday. I want every page, not just the ones somebody decided were relevant. The attorney's voice became more careful. You're entitled to a copy of the will. And the property description? Yes. And anything Grandpa left with it? The key and folder were everything in our file. Who put the key there? Richard brought it to the office. When? I'd have to check. Please check. I can ask my assistant to pull the intake notes. I'll come by this afternoon. You don't need to come in, I know. When she hung up, Caitlin wrote the time and date on the back of the property sheet. Then she wrote what the attorney had said about Derek not being allowed to alter the building. It was a small act, but it changed the morning. She wasn't waiting for her family to explain anything now. She was making a record. Isaiah arrived a little after 7 with coffee and a paper bag from the general store. He stopped when he saw her bedding near the stove. You stayed. Yes. That wasn't my recommendation. It wasn't a direct order either. He handed her a coffee. Carrie put sausage biscuits in the bag. She heard who they were for and added another one. Carrie Newman! You know her? I know the store. Carrie had sold Caitlin grape soda and penny candy when Richard took her fishing near the creek. She was always behind the same counter, even though decades had passed and the price stickers had changed. Isaiah set his tools on the table. Anything happen? Somebody drove down the trail around midnight. Did you see the vehicle? Just headlights. He went still. Could have been somebody turning around, Caitlin said. People don't use this trail to turn around. Derek says it wasn't him. That doesn't tell us much. He walked to the front door and crouched beside the sill. From his toolbox, he removed a small flat bar and a pair of pliers. Caitlin remained standing. Before we open it, I want to know something. Isaiah waited. If Grandpa told you to keep receipts, he had a reason. I don't expect you to give me $4,000. I don't expect free work either. I haven't asked you for money. You said somebody needed to honor those receipts. I said Richard owed me. You came out here the day I inherited this place. I did. Why? Isaiah placed the flat bar on the floor. Because he asked me to keep an eye on the toll house. When? Several times. What did he say? He said if the property ever changed hands, I should make sure nobody tore into it with a machine before the new owner saw it. Caitlin thought of Derek and his offer to remove the structure. Did he name me? No. The answer disappointed her. Isaiah saw that, but he didn't soften it. He didn't tell me about the will. He didn't tell me who'd get what. Richard could keep a thing quiet longer than was good for anybody. Did he tell you what's under the sill? No. Do you have any idea? I have ideas. That's different. She sat on the edge of the table. What are they? That the sill was changed after the rest of the frame. That he didn't ask me to do it. That he told me not to let anybody damage the house before its new owner saw it. And the materials, those are connected to something else. What? Isaiah picked up the flat bar again. If what's under this wood points there, I'll tell you. If it doesn't, then you'll need to decide whether you trust me. I barely know you. That would make it a poor decision today. Caitlin drank the coffee. It was hot and far too sweet. All right, she said. Open it. They began with the interior trim. Isaiah worked the flat bar behind the first board, while Caitlin held the lantern close. The wood cracked near one nail. Stop, she said. I heard it. He changed the angle and worked more slowly. The nail lifted with a long squeal. He pulled it free with the pliers and handed it to her. It was a common finishing nail, dark with age. The second was the same. The third was shorter and had been driven at an angle, almost hidden by a plug of putty. When the trim came free, they found another board beneath it. Caitlin touched the exposed edge. That's not part of the sill. No. Then what is it? Isaiah tapped it with the handle of his screwdriver. The sound was hollow. Caitlin looked at him. He tapped again, moving along the board. Near each end, the wood gave a solid knock. In the center, it answered differently. Isaiah set the screwdriver down. Somebody cut a cavity into it. Can you open it without breaking it? I think so. The false section had been fitted from below. To reach it, they had to lift the entire threshold. Isaiah removed 4 screws buried beneath hardened dirt. Caitlin brushed each one clean before he turned it. The final screw wouldn't move. He leaned harder on the driver. Wait, she said. You'll strip it. I know. I have penetrating oil in my car. Isaiah looked over his shoulder. Why? My front wheel's making a bad noise. I bought everything except the correct part. That sounds useful. She went out to the car. When she returned, he was reading the property sheet she'd left on the table. Find something? She asked. No road access, he said. That part's true? Not exactly. Caitlin set the oil beside him. Derek said the trail belongs to the orchard. The trail does. Then, what isn't true? The toll house used to face the old public road. The road moved when the bridge approach changed. So, land doesn't always forget a road because people stop using it. Does that mean I have access? It means somebody should check the old records. Who? Carrie would know where the historical maps went. She was on a county preservation committee years ago. Isaiah sprayed the screw and waited. The second attempt loosened it. Together, they raised the threshold. The underside had been hollowed through the middle, leaving enough wood around the edges to support a person's weight. A thin cedar panel covered the opening. The panel had swollen, but it came free when Isaiah worked his knife beneath one corner. Inside was a rectangular tin box wrapped in waxed cloth. Caitlin didn't touch it at first. The box had been protected carefully, not hidden in a hurry and not forgotten by accident. Isaiah sat back on his heels. That yours? He asked. It was under my door. I suppose that answers it. Caitlin lifted the bundle. It was heavier than she expected. The waxed cloth came away in stiff folds, revealing an old tobacco tin with faded green paint. The lid resisted. She pressed both thumbs beneath the edge until it opened with a sharp snap. Inside lay a heavy iron key and a folded piece of paper. The key was nearly as long as her palm. Its round bow had been worn smooth by use. It belonged to an old door, not the modern lock on the toll house. Caitlin unfolded the paper. The handwriting made her chest tighten before she read a word. Richard's letters always leaned slightly forward, as if they were in a hurry to finish. The note was short. Doors remember hands, sweetheart. Find the one only you were ever given the key to. There was no signature. Caitlin read it twice. Isaiah remained quiet. What door? She asked. I don't know. You said this might point somewhere. It might. Where? He looked at the key. Something in his face closed before she could understand it. Try it here first, he said. They checked the front lock, though the brass key already fit it. They tried the rusted stove, the small cupboard beside it, and a padlock hanging from an empty hasp on the back wall. The iron key entered none of them. Outside, they found a narrow toolbox beneath the porch. Its lock was too small. The hand pump had no lock at all. Caitlin walked around the building, searching for another door hidden by vines or boards. There wasn't one. When she returned, Isaiah had wrapped the tin in the waxed cloth again. "You know something," she said. "I know Richard used keys until the teeth wore off. He hated replacing a lock that still worked." "That's not what I mean." "No." "Then tell me." Isaiah stood and brushed dirt from his knees. "Carrie knew him before I did. She knew your grandmother, too. If Richard expected you to understand that note, she may know what he meant. Will she tell me? If you ask the right question." Caitlin put the iron key in her coat pocket, separate from the brass one. "What's the right question?" Isaiah handed her the folded note. "Ask her why your grandfather was afraid somebody would erase you." Caitlin folded the note along its old crease. "Did Richard use those words with you?" "No, but he used them with somebody." "You mean Carrie? I mean, you should ask her." Isaiah rebuilt the threshold before they left. He fitted the cedar panel back over the empty cavity, lowered the sill, and drove in new screws. Caitlin kept the tin box, both keys, and Richard's note in her coat pockets. They reached the general store before noon. The building sat where the old road curved toward the creek, with 2 gas pumps out front and a porch wide enough for feed sacks, propane cylinders, and a bench nobody seemed to use in winter. A painted sign above the door had faded until Lee Creek General Store was barely readable. A bell rang when Caitlin entered. Carrie Newman stood behind the counter with a pencil tucked into her gray hair. She was checking an invoice against a case of canned beans. A small radio played beside the register. "You ate both biscuits?" she asked Isaiah. "One was Caitlin's." "They were both Caitlin's. You wrote my name on the bag, so you'd carry it." Isaiah took a bottle of water from the cooler. "I'll pay for this. You'll pay for last Tuesday first." He put the bottle back. Carrie looked at Caitlin's muddy coat. Her eyes settled briefly on the pocket holding the iron key. "What happened to the sill?" she asked. Caitlin stopped. Isaiah took the pencil from Carrie's hair and placed it beside her invoice. "You could give a person time to reach the counter." Carrie ignored him. "Did you open it? How did you know it opened?" "Because Richard told me it did." Caitlin approached the counter. "When?" Carrie looked toward the 2 men choosing fishing hooks near the back wall. Then she turned the radio louder and nodded toward a door beside the drinks cooler. "Come into the office." The office was barely large enough for a desk, 2 chairs, and several leaning stacks of store records. A framed photograph showed Carrie and Richard standing beside a parade float covered in paper apple blossoms. Both looked much younger. Richard wore overalls and held a wooden sign upside down. Carrie closed the door. Caitlin placed the iron key on the desk. Carrie's expression changed. She didn't touch it. "So he did it," she said. "Did what?" "Left you something under the door." "You knew?" "I knew what he told me." "That isn't the same as knowing what he did." Caitlin took out the note and handed it across the desk. Carrie read it slowly. When she finished, she sat down. "I don't understand it," Caitlin said. "No. But it sounds like Richard. Isaiah said you knew why he was afraid I'd be erased." Carrie looked sharply at him. "I said she might know," Isaiah replied. "You enjoy leaving out the useful half of a sentence. It keeps people from interrupting." Carrie turned back to Caitlin. "It was after your father's funeral, not the same day, a week or 2 later." Caitlin sat in the other chair. "What happened?" "Your grandfather came in near closing. He bought coffee, though he didn't drink it. He stood where the bread rack used to be and watched it get cold." Carrie ran one hand over the edge of the note. "He was angry with Derek, angry with Christine too. They'd been discussing the orchard, Michael's shares, who'd control what. They were talking like your father's place in the family had closed with his casket." "What did Grandpa say?" "He said, they've already started making her smaller." Caitlin looked down at the key. Carrie continued carefully. "I told him he was her grandfather and could stop it. He said he'd spend his life teaching his children to protect the orchard, and they'd learn to protect it from everyone, including family." "Did he say what he planned to do?" "Not then. He said he wouldn't let them erase his granddaughter. He said if anything happened to him, you needed to find what was under the door." "The door to the toll house?" "He didn't say." "You never told me." No. Why? Because he was alive. For 16 years. Carrie accepted that without defending herself. He asked me to keep quiet, she said. I thought whatever he meant was something he'd give you himself. But he didn't. No. Caitlin rose and moved toward the small office window. It looked onto the side lot, where wet cardboard boxes had been stacked beside a trash bin. He watched them treat me like I was visiting my own family. I know. You knew he was planning something and said nothing. I knew he made a promise while he was grieving. People make promises after funerals. Did you think he forgot? At first. And later? Carrie glanced at Isaiah. Later, he started coming here for copies of old road maps. Isaiah leaned against the filing cabinet. You never told me that. He didn't ask you for them. What maps? Caitlin said. The toll road, the old crossing, and the property lines before the orchard expanded. He wanted anything from before the county rerouted the bridge approach. When? Several times. The last time was a few years ago. What did he do with them? Made notes? Took copies? Do you still have them? Carrie looked around the office as though the answer might be visible in one of the stacks. I have boxes from the Preservation Committee in storage. Where? Upstairs. Isaiah checked his watch. I have to get back to my shop. Caitlin had forgotten about his customer's transmission. I can stay, she said. Carrie shook her head. Those boxes have been up there since the roof leaked. I'm not sending you into that mess alone. I'll come back tomorrow. I close early tomorrow for a supplier meeting in Fort Smith. Tonight? Carrie glanced toward the store. I'm open until 6. I'll wait. You have work at 5 tomorrow morning, and a building with a hole where its threshold was. It's not a hole anymore. Isaiah picked up the iron key, turned it once in his hand, and returned it to Caitlin. I'll come back after I finish the truck, he said. I thought this wasn't the only thing you do. It isn't. That's why I'm leaving? He paused at the office door. Don't show that key to anybody. Carrie raised an eyebrow. Who's she going to show? The bait customers? I mean, family. Caitlin slipped it into her pocket. After Isaiah left, she helped Carrie at the store. She broke down boxes, carried bags of feed to 2 trucks, and replaced price labels on a shelf of canned soup. In return, Carrie fed her vegetable stew from a slow cooker behind the counter. They didn't speak about Richard while customers were present. Near 3, Logan walked in. He wore a navy rain jacket and clean brown boots. He stopped when he saw Caitlin stacking paper towels. I thought you worked at the bakery. I do. Then why are you here? Carrie spoke without looking up from the register. People can enter stores without changing careers. Logan smiled. I was just asking. He bought an energy drink and a packet of gum. Before paying, he took out his phone. Mom said you stayed at the shack last night. It's a toll house. The county calls it unsafe. The county calls a lot of things unsafe. You know Derek could be responsible if you get hurt crossing orchard land. That sounds like Derek's problem. It becomes everybody's problem when insurance gets involved. Caitlin continued stacking. Logan leaned one elbow on the counter. Uncle Derek's trying to help you. He said he'd take the property back and cover any filing costs. For $6, that's generous. His smile thinned. You looked up the assessment, Caitlin said. Before I left the parking lot. It's public information. You sent it around? I sent it to one person. Who sent it to everyone else? He glanced at Carrie, then lowered his voice. Look, nobody knew Grandpa would do that. Mom felt terrible. Your mother called me and asked me to give it back. She doesn't want you wasting money. Neither does Derek. Everyone's very worried about my $6. Logan twisted the cap from his drink. What did you find out there? The question came too casually. Caitlin kept her face still. Mice. What else? Water damage. Was Isaiah with you? He covered a window. Logan watched her for another moment. Derek says you need to call before crossing the orchard again. The trail is the only way in. Then call. He tapped his card against the reader, took the drink, and walked out. Carrie waited until his car left. He didn't drive this far for gum. No. Who told him Isaiah was there? Caitlin thought of the headlights on the trail. Maybe whoever came by last night. Carrie locked the register drawer. Richard used to say Logan could find a loose thread in a dark room, then pull until somebody lost a sleeve. That sounds more like Grandpa. It is. At 6, Carrie locked the front door and switched off the pumps. Isaiah hadn't returned. He'll come when the truck's done, she said. A promise to a customer outranks our curiosity. The stairs to the second floor were behind the office. Carrie led the way with a flashlight, warning Caitlin about the fourth step. Upstairs, 3 rooms held old shelves, broken store displays, holiday decorations, and cardboard record boxes. A brown water stain spread across the ceiling. "The preservation records are near the front," Carrie said, "unless I move them to keep them dry. That helps. It eliminates the back half." They searched for nearly an hour. The first useful box held photographs of the creek crossing before the modern bridge. The toll house had once stood beside a broad dirt road. A striped gate arm stretched across the lane, and a sign listed fees for wagons, livestock, and automobiles. Caitlin turned the photograph over. Richard's handwriting marked a date and the words "original frontage." The next box held meeting minutes, grant applications, and folded survey copies. Carrie spread them across the floor. A vehicle stopped outside. Caitlin moved to the front window. Derek's truck was parked beside her car. He tried the store door, found it locked, and looked up. Caitlin stepped away before he saw her. Her phone rang. She answered. "What? Where are you?" "Inside the store. Carrie closes at 6. She's still here." "What are you doing? Helping? With what?" Caitlin looked at the maps on the floor. "Why did you change the lock on the orchard gate?" Derek didn't answer. She had guessed from Logan's warning. His silence confirmed it. "That gate is orchard property," he said. "You knew I was staying at the toll house. You can't cross active farm property whenever you feel like it. It's March. There's no active harvest. There's spraying, equipment movement, insurance exposure. There's no other way to my property. That isn't my fault. You inherited the road yesterday. I inherited the orchard. The road is part of it. So you're locking me out until I give you the house. I never said that." "You didn't need to?" Derek lowered his voice. "Come downstairs. We'll discuss it." "No." "Caitlin, I'm busy." "With Carrie's old maps?" She looked toward the window again. Derek was still beneath it, staring at the dark glass. "What are you afraid I'll find?" she asked. His answer came quickly. "Nothing." Too quickly. "Then unlock the gate, sign a liability release. Have the attorney send it. He will. And I'll have someone read it before I sign. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "You changed the lock." Caitlin ended the call. Derek remained outside another minute. Then his truck backed away from the store. Carrie sat on the floor beside a stack of surveys. He knew about the maps. Logan must have called him. Maybe. Caitlin crouched beside her. Near the bottom of the stack, Carrie found a county road plan from before the bridge approach changed. A narrow public route ran along the creek, directly in front of the toll house. Beyond it, a second line followed the rear edge of the orchard. Carrie traced it with one finger. That was the old timber track. Where did it go? Up toward the ridge, most of it washed out. Caitlin studied the paper. Someone had added a small mark in pencil beyond the orchard's back tree line. It looked like the outline of a house. Beside it was a single letter. "A," Caitlin said. Carrie leaned closer. "That wasn't on the county plan." "Whose writing is it?" Carrie touched the pencil mark, then turned the map toward the light. "Your grandfather's." Carrie sat back on her heels. The letter could mean anything. "What was my grandmother's first name?" Caitlin asked. "Anna. So it could be hers." "It could. Did she own property back there?" "Not that I knew." Caitlin photographed the map, then turned it over. There were no notes on the back. The pencil mark lay beyond the visible orchard boundary near a creek branch and an old fence line. Isaiah arrived a few minutes later, carrying the smell of cold air and transmission fluid upstairs with him. He apologized to Carrie for the hour, then stopped when Caitlin showed him the map. He didn't ask what the mark meant. He asked, "Where did you find this?" "In a box under 3 years of parade permits," Carrie said. Isaiah held the map by its edges. "This timber track hasn't been passable from the south in years." "Is it passable from anywhere?" Caitlin asked. "Maybe from the old equipment lane. Does Derek control that too?" "Yes." "Then we walk." "Not tonight." Caitlin looked at Carrie. "Everyone tells me to wait until morning." "That's because holes are harder to see in the dark," Carrie said. Isaiah folded the map along its existing lines. "We've had rain for 3 days. The lower trail will be underwater. How long until it dries?" "A week if the weather holds." Caitlin didn't like the answer, but the photograph on her phone wasn't going anywhere. Neither was the iron key. When they went downstairs, a white envelope had been pushed beneath the store door. Derek's name was written in the return corner. Inside was a liability release prepared by the estate attorney. It granted Caitlin temporary permission to cross orchard property for the limited purpose of inspecting the toll house. She would assume responsibility for injury, property damage, and interference with farm operations. At the bottom, a second paragraph said, permission could be withdrawn at any time. He had this ready quickly, Carrie said. He had it ready before he called. Isaiah read it twice. Don't sign tonight. I wasn't going to. You need access? I also need access he can't take away whenever he's annoyed. Carrie made a copy and placed the original back in the envelope. Jeffrey Knight handles title research in Van Buren, she said. He found an old access easement for the church cemetery when the new owner tried to fence it. Will he talk to me before the property deed is recorded? He'll talk if you pay him. How much? For a first look. Probably less than a motel room. Caitlin put the envelope in her folder. The next morning, she returned to the bakery. She arrived before 5, tied on her apron, and spent 6 hours shaping rolls, wiping counters, and carrying trays to the display case. At 10, Logan came in for coffee. He usually visited a drive-thru closer to his office. Caitlin knew because he'd complained about its prices at Christmas. He stood near the register while she filled his cup. Did you sign Derek's form? No, it's standard. Then he won't mind if I have it checked. Logan added sugar without tasting the coffee. You're treating this like somebody's trying to steal from you. Somebody locked the gate. He's protecting the orchard. From me? From liability. Caitlin placed the lid on his cup. Did you drive down the trail the night I stayed there? No. She watched his face. Logan picked up the coffee. Why would I? To see what I was doing. You were sleeping in a condemned shack. I didn't need to see it. He left without adding cream. That afternoon, Caitlin paid Jeffrey Knight for an initial property search. His office occupied 2 rooms above an insurance agency near the courthouse. Shelves held thick index books, rolled surveys, and document boxes labeled by county. He studied the property description in Richard's will. This language is old, he said. The house is old. I mean the boundary description. It refers to the original toll charter and a sycamore that probably hasn't existed for a century. Can you tell whether I have access? I can tell whether anything was recorded. That isn't always the same as what can be enforced. How long? A few days for a basic search. Longer if the records send me backward. She paid his retainer from the money she'd saved for her next apartment deposit. For the following week, she slept at the toll house and worked at the bakery. Isaiah installed a temporary brace beneath the porch. Caitlin removed ruined plaster, swept animal nests from the cupboard, and scrubbed the table until the grain appeared beneath the dirt. The work gave Derek less room to call the place abandoned. It also gave her somewhere to put her anger. Isaiah came when his repair shop allowed it. Some evenings he stayed an hour. On Sunday he stayed all afternoon and cleaned the stove flue. He made Caitlin do most of the dirty work because, as he told her, she was the one planning to use it. She coughed black soot into a handkerchief and accused him of enjoying himself. I enjoy a chimney that doesn't kill people, he said. The well water failed its first test. Caitlin hauled drinking water from the store. Carrie let her use the shower in the small apartment behind it, though she insisted this was temporary and charged her for the soap. At the end of March, Jeffrey called. There's an old public right-of-way along the front boundary, he said. It was never formally abandoned in the records I've checked. Does that mean Derek has to let me through the gate? No, it means your parcel may have legal access from the old road frontage, even if the usable road no longer reaches it. That doesn't help me drive there. It helps you establish that the property isn't necessarily landlocked. Caitlin sat on the toll house step with her phone against her ear. Derek read that word from the county sheet like it settled everything. County tax notes aren't title opinions. Can you put that in writing? I can put my findings in writing when I finish. What else are you looking for? The charter frontage has been carried forward through several deeds. There's language tied to the creek crossing that I haven't traced yet. Is that unusual? It's old. Old and unusual are often neighbors. The first week of April brought 3 dry, warm days. The creek dropped, and the ground along the lower trail began to firm. Isaiah arrived early on the 4th morning, with boots, rope, pruning shears, and a canvas pack. Caitlin was already waiting outside the toll house. You working at the shop today? She asked. Closed until noon. For this? For a dentist appointment. She looked at the rope. My dentist doesn't usually require that. He might if you ask enough questions. They left the toll house on foot. Isaiah led her north along the creek. then turned through an opening where an old fence had collapsed beneath vines. The timber track was barely visible. Young cedar trees grew in the middle of it, and storm debris blocked the lower section. Caitlin took out the map. The pencil mark should be west of here. I know. She lowered the paper. You've been there. Isaiah cut a thorn vine from the path. Yes. When? A long time ago. Why didn't you say that in the store? Because Derek was outside, and Carrie's windows are thin. He left before you arrived, and I didn't know what you'd told her. Caitlin followed him over a fallen trunk. What's back there? You should see it before I explain it. That sounds convenient. It isn't. They climbed for nearly an hour. The trail moved behind the orchard's back tree line, hidden from the packing sheds by a low ridge. Old tire ruts appeared beneath the leaves. Someone had once kept the route clear. At a fork, Isaiah stopped. The left branch descended toward an overgrown pond. The right branch passed between two stone posts, almost hidden by brush. Caitlin held up the map. Richard's penciled letters sat exactly where the right branch began. What does the A mean? She asked. Isaiah looked at the stone posts. I always thought it meant Anna, so did Carrie. Your grandfather called this the Ashford place. Caitlin knew the name, but it took her a moment to place it. Ashford had been her grandmother's maiden name. It appeared in an old family Bible and nowhere else Caitlin remembered. Did Grandma live here? No. Did she own it? Not while she was alive. Then why call it that? Richard said it was safer if the family had no reason to recognize the name. Caitlin stopped walking. Safer from what? He didn't tell me. You helped him hide something from Derek. Isaiah's jaw moved before he answered. I helped him repair a building on land he said was his, with the materials on your receipts. Yes. The nearly $4,000 suddenly belonged to a real place. You knew there was another building. I knew there was a cottage. I didn't know he meant to leave you a key. You let me sleep in the toll house. You didn't tell me you had nowhere else until that night. You could have brought me here the next morning. I didn't know it belonged to you. You still don't. No, Isaiah said. That's what the key is for. They continued between the stone posts. The track narrowed, then opened into a clearing, bright with early spring grass. At the far end stood a cottage. Caitlin didn't speak. It had a deep front porch, tapered wooden columns, and a low roof with broad eaves. The siding was painted soft green with cream trim. Rain barrels stood beneath copper gutters. A stone chimney rose straight against the blue sky. It wasn't abandoned. It wasn't condemned. It looked ready. Isaiah remained several steps behind her. Caitlin crossed the clearing slowly. A gravel path led to the porch. Someone had cut back the shrubs before winter. The porch boards were clean, except for leaves gathered in one corner. She touched the nearest column. When did you do this? We started in 2011. We? Your grandfather and me. Some electricians from Fort Smith. A plumber who thought the invoices were for a hunting cabin. Carrie helped choose the kitchen paint, though she didn't know where it was going. You worked here for 15 years? Off and on? Richard did more himself than he should have. Why didn't anyone see? The orchard crews had no reason to come behind the ridge. Materials came through my shop. Richard used his own truck. Caitlin walked to the front door. The lock was old black iron, carefully restored. She took the key from her pocket. Her hand shook enough that she had to steady it with the other. The key entered cleanly. She turned it. The lock moved with a heavy click. Inside, afternoon light fell across a narrow hall and polished oak floors. The air smelled of cedar, clean dust, and a house closed through winter. To the left was a sitting room with a brick fireplace. To the right was a small bedroom. Farther back, the kitchen walls were painted a warm yellow Caitlin remembered from Carrie's own kitchen. A blue enamel kettle sat on the stove. Caitlin touched it. Was this his? It belonged to your grandmother. She opened a cupboard. White plates stood stacked inside. The drawers held silverware, dish towels, matches, and candles. In the bedroom, quilts had been folded at the foot of the bed. The place had not been furnished like a rental or a hunting cabin. It had been prepared for someone who would need everything at once. Caitlin sat on the edge of the bed. Isaiah stayed in the doorway. He could have told me, she said. Yes. Any time. Yes. Why didn't he? I asked him once. What did he say? That a gift announced too early becomes a family argument. Caitlin looked around the room. This is a fairly large argument. Isaiah almost smiled, but she didn't. Does Derek know? She asked. Not from me. Christine? No. Carrie? She knows Richard worked on a place. She doesn't know where. Caitlin stood again. Who owns it? That's the question. They searched the cottage carefully. The utility room held a breaker panel, a water heater, and labeled shut-off valves. The electricity was disconnected at the main line, but the wiring looked complete. A folder on the kitchen counter contained appliance manuals and maintenance notes in Richard's handwriting. Nothing named an owner. In the bedroom closet, Caitlin found a square steel plate bolted to the floor beneath a cedar shelf. It had a small keyhole, but the iron key was too large. Isaiah brought tools from his pack. This wasn't here the last time I came. When was that? November. Can you open it? Not without damaging the lock. Caitlin examined the closet. A wooden rail ran beneath the shelf. One section showed a pale edge where it had been handled more often than the rest. She pressed it. A narrow panel released. Behind it hung a small brass key on a string. That man liked doors, Isaiah said. The brass key opened the steel plate. Beneath it was a shallow compartment holding a black document box. Caitlin carried it to the bed. Inside lay a stack of recorded papers, several sealed letters, and a ring holding 2 house keys. The top document bore a county recording stamp, dated 15 years earlier. She read the first page once, then began again, more slowly. The property description named 12 acres behind the western boundary of Lawrence Orchards. It included the cottage, the timber access track, and a spring-fed pond. The owner was listed as the Ashford Family Irrevocable Trust. Caitlin turned the page. A paragraph identified the beneficiary. Her full name was typed there, Caitlin Marie Lawrence, sole beneficiary. She lowered the page and looked at Isaiah. Does this mean I own it? It means Richard wanted you to. That's not the same thing. No, it isn't. She checked the recording stamp again. The Crawford County clerk's seal pressed through the paper. A book number and page number appeared beside it. Why put it in a trust? I don't know. You helped build the cottage. I wasn't invited to his legal meetings. Caitlin opened the first envelope. Her name was written across the front. Beneath it, Richard had added, "Read this one first." The letter inside was 6 pages long. Richard began with an apology. He wrote that he should have spoken sooner, but he had learned too late that announcing a plan could leave it exposed to the very people who made the plan necessary. Caitlin sat against the headboard while she read. Isaiah moved to the kitchen. He gave her privacy without leaving the cottage. Richard wrote about Michael's death, and the week afterward. Derek had wanted voting control of Michael's share in the orchard company. Christine had wanted it sold back to the business so the ownership would stay simple. Both had spoken as if Caitlin's future could be settled, with one payment placed somewhere out of sight. Richard had refused. He had not refused loudly enough. That sentence appeared alone near the bottom of the second page. Caitlin read it twice. He wrote that Derek had always confused control with safety. If every decision passed through him, he believed nothing could go wrong. Christine was different. She saw land, accounts, and buildings as pieces that could be shifted whenever money became tight. Neither of them meant to be cruel, Richard wrote. They had simply become practiced at deciding who counted. Caitlin stopped reading. The room remained quiet. Through the window, she could see Isaiah crossing the porch with an armful of fallen branches. She continued. In early 2011, Richard had separated the 12 acres from the orchard. He placed them into an irrevocable trust under Anna's maiden name. The trust could not be pulled back into the estate later, and it could not be pledged for orchard debt. That last phrase had been underlined. Richard explained why on the following page. Derek had begun borrowing against equipment to keep orchard operations moving through poor seasons. At first, the loans had been ordinary. Tractors, sprayers, and sorting machines were expensive, and fruit income came unevenly. Then Derek began moving loans between equipment, extending old balances, and using newly purchased machines to support earlier debt. Richard had confronted him. Derek insisted the orchard could grow its way out. Richard didn't believe he was stealing. He believed Derek was risking too much because admitting weakness would cost him authority. If a series of bad harvests came, the equipment could be taken. Without equipment, the orchard land might be next. Richard wanted one part beyond reach. Caitlin turned the page. Christine had pushed in the other direction. Her rental properties had been refinanced more than once. She'd asked Richard to guarantee a loan, then asked him to sell creek frontage and lend her the proceeds. He refused both requests. After that, Christine began asking questions about which orchard parcels had clear titles and which could be sold without affecting production. The 12 acres could have answered both Derek's need for collateral and Christine's need for cash, so Richard removed them before either knew to ask. Caitlin held the letter in her lap. The answer was complete enough to hurt. Her grandfather hadn't hidden the cottage because he enjoyed secrets. He had hidden it because he believed his own children would reach for it if they knew. He hadn't trusted Derek to leave it unpledged. He hadn't trusted Christine to leave it unsold. And he hadn't trusted himself to stop them openly. Isaiah came back inside and left his boots near the door. "You finished?" "The first one." "What did it say?" Caitlin folded the pages. That grandpa thought the orchard might be carrying more debt than anyone knew. He was afraid Derek would use this land to protect the business. Isaiah leaned against the dresser. That would be like Derek. "You knew?" "I knew equipment notes were arriving faster than equipment." "Why didn't you tell Grandpa?" "He knew. He asked me for serial numbers and purchase dates. That's why he had you keep receipts separate." "Partly." Caitlin looked toward the closet where the document box remained open. And Christine wanted land sold. She often did. Because of her rentals. Isaiah nodded. "Richard never discussed her accounts with me. I heard arguments." Caitlin opened the second envelope. This letter was dated several years after the first. Richard wrote that the cottage roof was finished and the well had been repaired. He wrote that Isaiah had found old heart pine flooring from a church renovation and complained for 2 days about the nails. From the kitchen, Isaiah said, "They were square nails." Took forever. Caitlin looked up. "You know which letter I'm reading?" "I remember the floor." Richard's tone grew more serious near the end. He wrote that Caitlin might wonder why he had not simply placed money in trust. Money left traces in family accounts. Land could remain quiet, especially beneath a name Derek and Christine would not recognize. Ashford belonged to Anna. Richard trusted the name because his children had rarely asked about anything that existed before them. The third envelope held copies of bills and handwritten lists. Every amount Isaiah had mentioned appeared there. Richard had marked which materials were paid and which remained outstanding. A total at the bottom matched Isaiah's estimate within a few dollars. "You could have shown me these," Caitlin said. "I didn't know he kept copies here. Would you have asked the estate to pay?" "I plan to. Derek is the estate representative." "Yes." "And he controls the orchard books." "Yes." "He'd ask where the materials went." Isaiah pulled out the kitchen chair. That was the problem. Caitlin counted the cash she had in savings. It wasn't enough to pay Isaiah and keep her car running. The trust documents might make the cottage hers, but they didn't put food in the cupboards or reconnect electricity. "I can't pay all of it now. I didn't ask you to. Grandpa bought materials for my house. If it is your house." "You keep saying that." "Because a recorded stamp is good. A title search is better." She put the receipts back in the box. "I'll pay you when I can. Pay the electric company first. I mean it." So did Richard. The fourth letter had no date. It was shorter. Richard wrote that the toll house mattered separately from the cottage. The little building had guarded the crossing before the orchard existed. Its charter frontage had survived every later land division because nobody saw enough value to separate it. He told Caitlin not to sell anything until she understood both properties. He didn't explain why. That omission bothered her more after everything else. "What did he know about the toll frontage?" she asked. Isaiah shook his head. "He never told me. He underlined it in this letter. Then Jeffrey needs to trace it." Caitlin returned the letters to their envelopes. She kept the deed copy, the trust papers, and the receipts in the black box. They locked the cottage before leaving. She took the 2 house keys from the ring and kept the iron key with Richard's note. On the walk back, Isaiah showed her where the timber track joined an equipment lane behind the orchard. A rusted chain blocked the lane, but the chain was fastened with an old combination lock. "Derek controls this?" she asked. "The orchard uses it during pruning. Do you know the combination?" "I used to." He turned the dial. The lock opened. Caitlin looked at him. "I remembered," he said. They reached the toll house shortly after noon. Derek's truck was parked beside it. He stood on the porch, looking at the repaired threshold. A document envelope was tucked beneath one arm. Isaiah stopped several yards away. Derek looked from him to Caitlin. "Where have you been?" "Walking on orchard land?" "Near it." "You didn't sign the release?" "No." Derek stepped off the porch. I came to save us all some trouble. He held out the envelope. Caitlin didn't take it. What is it? Clean up paperwork. The estate descriptions overlap in a few places. Dad's old deeds are a mess. Which descriptions? The toll parcel and the orchard boundary. Jeffrey Knight said the toll parcel had been carried forward clearly. Derek's face tightened. Why are you paying a title man? Because you changed the gate lock. This isn't about the gate. What is it about? Keeping the orchard title clean. He removed the papers and handed them to her. The first page carried the word quitclaim across the top. The legal description was longer than the one in her folder. It referred not only to the toll house, but to any interest Caitlin might hold in land formerly belonging to Richard Lawrence along Lee Creek and west of the orchard boundary. Caitlin read that sentence again. Derek didn't know about the trust. She could see that now. If he knew, he would not be standing calmly on the porch with a general form and a cheap ballpoint pen. He was fishing in dark water. Why does this say any interest? She asked. It's standard language. Logan said the liability release was standard too. Logan didn't prepare this. Who did? The estate attorney. Caitlin checked the footer. A different law office was named there. No, he didn't. Derek glanced at the bottom of the page. He reviewed it. Then, why isn't his office on it? You're making an issue where there isn't one. Caitlin handed the papers to Isaiah. Derek reached for them. Those are family documents. I'm family, Caitlin said. I wasn't talking to you. Isaiah kept the pages in his hand. Quitclaims aren't cleanup forms. They clear uncertain ownership. Whose ownership is uncertain? Derek's neck reddened. You work for the orchard, Isaiah, until 5 most days. This is one of those days. Isaiah returned the papers to Caitlin. Derek lowered his voice. I'm trying to prevent a boundary dispute that could cost everyone money. Then send the survey, Caitlin said. What survey? The one showing the overlap. There isn't a new survey. So what showed you the problem? Dad's records. Which records? Derek looked toward the cottage trail without seeming to know he'd done it. Caitlin folded the quitclaim and put it in the document box. I'm not signing. You can't keep that copy. It has my name on it. It isn't an offer, it's a draft. Then you won't need it. Derek stepped closer. You're letting Isaiah turn this into something it isn't. Isaiah didn't write Grandpa's will. No. But he has spent years billing Dad for private work nobody can account for. Isaiah's face changed, though his voice stayed even. I can account for every board. I'm sure you can produce receipts. I can produce what the materials built. Caitlin looked at him, warning him not to say more. Derek noticed. What materials? He asked. Repairs, Caitlin said. To this place? Some of them. The answer was Isaiah's, and Derek heard that too. He looked at the new threshold, then at Caitlin's mud-covered boots. You found something. Caitlin held his gaze. You told everyone there was nothing to find. Derek remained still for several seconds. Then he walked to his truck. You have no right to use the back equipment lane, he said. I have no need to tell you where I walk. If you interfere with orchard operations, I'll call the sheriff. For walking? For trespassing. He drove away hard enough to throw mud across the grass. Isaiah waited until the truck disappeared. He knows we didn't spend the morning at the toll house. He doesn't know where we went. He'll start looking. Caitlin took the black document box inside. She placed it on the table, photographed every page of the quitclaim, and called Jeffrey Knight. I found recorded trust papers, she said when he answered. What trust? One that owns 12 acres behind the orchard. There was a short pause. Whose name is on it? Ashford. Jeffrey stopped turning papers on his end of the line. Bring me everything, he said. Caitlin drove to his office before her bakery shift ended. Her manager let her leave early after one look at the black box beneath her arm. Jeffrey cleared the papers from his desk and put on thin reading glasses. He examined the recording stamps first, then the legal descriptions, signatures, and notary seals. Where did you get these? From a compartment under a closet. He looked over the glasses. In a house nobody told me existed. That explains less than you think. It's been that kind of month. Jeffrey read the trust document from beginning to end. He made notes on a yellow pad and compared the deed with the property description from Richard's will. The toll house isn't included in this trust, he said. I know. The 12 acres are separate. Different chain, different parcel identification. Does the trust own them? The recorded deed says it does. I need to confirm what happened before and after this filing. How long? If the index cooperates, a week. Derek is already looking. For the property? He knows I found something. He tried to get me to sign this. She handed him the quitclaim. Jeffrey read the broad legal language and sat back. This could release more than the toll parcel. That's what I thought. It doesn't specifically name the trust land. It says any interest west of the orchard. That's the problem. Would it work? If you signed it, somebody could certainly argue that it did. Whether they'd win is a question you don't want to pay to answer. Caitlin placed the quitclaim back in the box. What do I do with the originals? Not leave them in a condemned building. Helpful. Keep them somewhere secure. I'll work from certified courthouse copies. The county records sat across the street in the courthouse annex. Caitlin went with him because she was tired of waiting in rooms while other people decided which documents she needed. Jeffrey began with the county index. The Ashford name led to a filing from early 2011. That deed referenced an earlier Lawrence conveyance, which led to a survey prepared the previous winter. The survey showed 12 acres cut cleanly from the orchard's western tract. Richard had signed as grantor. He had also signed as the first trustee of the Ashford family irrevocable trust. The trust instrument named Caitlin as sole beneficiary and successor trustee upon his death. Jeffrey traced the land backward through Richard's original orchard purchases. Then he traced it forward. There were no mortgages, no tax liens, no later deeds, no boundary corrections returning it to the orchard. For 15 years, the parcel had remained exactly where Richard placed it. Jeffrey ordered certified copies. When the clerk brought them, Caitlin compared each page with the papers from the cottage. The stamps, numbers, and signatures matched. "This is it?" she asked. "This is the recorded chain. So Derek doesn't own it. No, Christine doesn't own it. No, the estate doesn't own it." Jeffrey removed his glasses. "Not according to any record in this courthouse." Caitlin touched the certified seal. "And the cottage? A permanent structure follows the land unless a document says otherwise. Nothing here does." She didn't smile. The answer was too large for that. What can they challenge? People can challenge almost anything if they're willing to file. They'd need a legal reason: fraud, incapacity, improper execution, something like that. Do you see one? The deed was notarized. The trust was recorded. Richard continued paying the property taxes as trustee. He signed maintenance affidavits years apart. That matters because it shows an ongoing plan, not one confused afternoon. Caitlin thought of the receipts Isaiah had kept and the work done over 15 years. What should I do next? Get the utilities transferred, insure the cottage, keep the originals safe, and don't discuss this with your family until you've spoken to someone who handles trusts. I can't afford a long legal fight. Then don't start one. Secure what you already have. Jeffrey prepared a written title abstract over the next 2 weeks. Caitlin used it to place the cottage insurance in the trust's name and apply for electrical service as successor trustee. The power company required a site inspection. Isaiah cleared the equipment lane before the technician arrived, and Caitlin replaced the old combination lock with one of her own. For the first time, Derek had to call her for access. He didn't. He sent Logan, who stood on the far side of the chain while the technician checked the service pole. "What's this for?" Logan asked. "Electricity?" "To what?" "A building." "What building?" "The one served by that line." Logan looked past her toward the ridge. "That line is on orchard land. The pole is. The meter isn't." "Who told you that?" "The power company." "Caitlin, you're being strange." She unlocked the chain for the service truck and closed it behind them. "You drove to the bakery for coffee. That isn't strange. You don't like our coffee." Logan watched the truck disappear between the trees. "Mom wants to talk to you. She has my number." Christine called that evening. She asked Caitlin to meet at the farmhouse. Caitlin suggested the general store instead. Christine refused, then proposed a coffee shop in Van Buren. They met the following afternoon. Christine had already ordered tea for both of them. She'd chosen a table near the back, away from the other customers. "I owe you an apology," she began. "For what? The will reading, the way everyone behaved, everyone?" Logan laughed. Derek was insensitive. "I should have stopped it." "You laughed too." Christine looked at her cup. "I reacted badly." It was the closest she had come to admitting it. Caitlin waited. Christine opened a leather folder. "I'd like to buy the toll property. You said it had no value. I said the assessment reflected its condition. You said I shouldn't waste money, and I still don't think you should. but the old frontage would make a clean addition to one of my rental holdings. Your rentals aren't near Lee Creek. I'm considering other plans. She slid an offer across the table. $25,000. 6 weeks earlier, Caitlin might have stared at that number until Christine mistook shock for agreement. Now she read every line. The offer required Caitlin to convey the toll house, its charter frontage, and all access rights tied to it. It also contained a confidentiality clause. Why would this be confidential? Caitlin asked. It's routine. That word is getting popular. Private transactions stay simpler when they remain private. Does Derek know you're offering this? Christine's fingers tightened around her cup. This is my money. That wasn't my question. He knows I'm trying to solve the boundary issue by buying land that doesn't touch your rentals. Christine lowered her voice. $25,000 could change your situation. You don't know my situation? I know you were sleeping in that building. Who told you? Logan saw your car at midnight? Christine's eyes shifted. The headlights on the trail had belonged to Logan. Caitlin knew it then. He was concerned, Christine said. He was watching me. He was checking a family property. My property. Caitlin, please don't turn every conversation into a fight. I didn't bring a secret purchase agreement. Christine pushed the offer closer. Think about it for 2 days. I'll have Jeffrey look at it. No. The word came too sharply. Christine softened her voice. There's no need to involve another person. The offer is straightforward. Then he'll confirm that. Caitlin took the unsigned copy and left. Jeffrey called the following morning before she could call him. I gave your number to someone, he said. Who? A right-of-way agent with the State Transportation Department. She contacted me about the toll charter parcel after my abstract request hit the county system. Why does the state care? She should explain that herself. Stephanie Juarez called 10 minutes later. She spoke plainly and asked whether Caitlin could meet at the toll house. 2 days afterward, a white state vehicle arrived at the old public frontage rather than Derek's orchard gate. Stephanie walked in wearing work boots and carrying a rolled plan beneath one arm. You found another way here, Caitlin said. The state owns the current approach shoulder. Your old frontage begins beyond it. She spread the plan across the toll house table. A broad shaded line crossed the narrow parcel beside the creek. The Lee Creek Bridge is due for replacement, Stephanie said. The preferred design needs a permanent approach easement here. Caitlin studied the line. It crossed the old toll road, but avoided the building. When was this decided? The corridor was selected several years ago. Final right-of-way acquisition was delayed by design changes and title questions. Whose title questions? Richard Lawrence held the toll parcel separately from the orchard. After his death, we needed to confirm who received it. Christine knew. Stephanie looked up. I haven't spoken to Christine. She offered me $25,000. For the parcel, yes. Don't sign anything until you review our appraisal. Stephanie unrolled a second page. The state's offer was $210,000. Caitlin sat down. For an easement? A permanent one, plus temporary construction access. You keep ownership of the toll house and the ground outside the easement. Why is it worth that much? Because the bridge approach can't move far without creating larger costs. Your frontage is narrow, but it sits where the project needs to pass. Stephanie showed her the construction limits, drainage plan, and proposed access route. The toll house could remain. The state would stabilize the ground near it and build a small pull-off after construction if Caitlin agreed to the historical marker plan. What happens if I say no? We negotiate. If we can't agree, the state has other legal options, but those take time and require review. I'd rather make an agreement that works. Caitlin looked through the open door at the leaning porch. I want to restore this. That could fit the project. We'd need safety setbacks. And I need access that doesn't depend on my uncle's gate. The new pull-off would provide it. For weeks, access had been the pressure Derek controlled. The state plan could remove it completely. Stephanie handed her the written offer. There's no deadline today. Have your title person review it. Have an attorney review it too. Has anyone else requested these plans? Public corridor plans have been available for years. Detailed acquisition files are restricted, but people who follow local property projects would know the approach was coming. Christine managed money and real estate. Logan searched county records. They had seen enough to guess the toll frontage mattered, but not enough to know its price. Caitlin folded the plan carefully. I'm not signing today. I didn't expect you to. I want the house protected in writing. I want permanent public access after construction. And I want to know who repairs any damage. Stephanie took out a pen. Those are things we can put into the agreement. After she left, Caitlin locked the state offer, Jeffrey's abstract, Richard's letters, and the certified trust papers inside the steel compartment at the cottage. Then she hung one of the new house keys around her neck. The iron key had led her there, but the papers proved she had the right to stay. By the second week of June, the cottage had electricity, running water, and insurance. Caitlin still slept at the toll house several nights each week because repairs were underway there, but she kept her clothes in the cottage bedroom. She told no one in the family about the state's offer. Jeffrey told no one either. Stephanie's office communicated through Caitlin, and Isaiah kept working at his shop. Carrie stored copies of the most important papers in a locked drawer beneath the general store register. Silence made the family nervous. Logan began searching under Richard's name. He searched deeds, liens, surveys, and tax parcels. When he found nothing beyond the estate records everyone already knew, he searched legal descriptions instead. A survey reference led him to the Western Tract. The Western Tract led to the Ashford deed. He called Christine from the courthouse annex. "Do you know the name Ashford?" There was a pause. "It was your grandmother's family name," she said. "Grandma Anna?" "Yes." "Why?" "There's a trust." Christine didn't speak. Logan sent her photographs of the recorded deed and trust certificate. Then he searched the parcel number and found 12 acres with a cottage listed as a residential improvement. The appraised value was $265,000. Christine called Derek before she left her office. Derek arrived at her house that evening, carrying Richard's estate files in 2 banker's boxes. Logan spread the courthouse copies across the dining table. None of them had seen the documents before. "That signature looks like Dad's," Derek said. "It is Dad's," Christine replied. "That doesn't make this right. He did it 15 years ago." "Exactly. He hid property for 15 years. Derek read the legal description again. He understood where the parcel sat before Logan finished explaining. The back ridge, the old pond, the equipment lane Richard had told everyone not to bother maintaining. Then he understood where Isaiah's private materials had gone. "What did Caitlin tell you?" he asked Logan. "Nothing." "What did Isaiah tell you?" "Nothing." "Then how did she find it?" "The toll house." Christine looked at her son. "What about it?" There was a new threshold when Derek went out there. They found something inside. Derek remembered the look between Caitlin and Isaiah. He also remembered saying the materials couldn't be accounted for. If Richard had left letters, the equipment loans might be described in them. The orchard was current on its payments, but only because Derek kept moving money quickly. He had never believed he was endangering the business. He had believed Richard lacked the nerve to modernize it. That belief was harder to maintain when 12 acres had been removed without his knowledge. Christine gathered the papers into a neat stack. "We challenge the trust." Derek looked at her. "On what basis?" "Dad's capacity. He ran the orchard for another 15 years. You ran the orchard. He signed contracts. He handled accounts. He also hid a house in the woods and left a condemned shack to Michael's daughter." "Caitlin," Derek said. Christine's expression sharpened. "I know her name, then use it." Logan watched them. He had expected his courthouse work to prove his value to his mother. Instead, the room had become quieter with each page he produced. "We could say the trust was discovered after probate," he offered, "that the circumstances are suspicious." "Suspicious isn't a basis," Derek said. "Undue influence," Christine said. "By who?" Caitlin didn't know it existed. Isaiah did. Derek pushed back from the table. "Isaiah is a mechanic, not a mastermind. He helped Dad conceal improvements from the family and the business, with Dad's own money. You don't know that." Derek knew enough. Richard had asked him questions about equipment debt around the same time the trust was created. He'd thought the old man was checking routine expenses. Christine leaned toward him. "If Caitlin has Dad's private papers, what else does she have?" Derek looked at the deed. That was the question that committed him. 3 days later, Caitlin received a petition by certified mail at the bakery. Her manager signed for it, thinking it was related to the estate. Caitlin opened it beside the flour bins. Christine Lawrence Rice, through Logan's property attorney, asked the probate court to examine the Ashford Trust and declare the deed invalid. The petition claimed Richard lacked the mental capacity to understand the transfer when he made it. It also suggested unnamed parties had isolated him, concealed property, and influenced his decisions. Derek had signed a sworn statement saying Richard had depended on him for complex orchard decisions by the time the trust was created. Caitlin read his statement twice. 15 years earlier, Derek had accepted every contract Richard signed when those signatures benefited the orchard. Now, he claimed the same man couldn't understand a deed that protected land from it. Isaiah arrived at the bakery within half an hour. Caitlin had called him before Jeffrey because his name appeared 6 times in the petition. "They're saying you influenced him," she said. Isaiah read the page near the loading door. "I couldn't influence Richard to wear gloves in freezing weather. They're asking for your bank records. They'll be disappointed. They say the cottage work proves secret control. It proves I can install a roof." Caitlin pressed her palms against the steel preparation table. "This is because I didn't sign. It's because they found the trust. They want me to spend money until I can't defend it. Yes. What if I can't?" Isaiah folded the petition along its original crease. "Then we make sure the truth costs less to show than the lie costs to maintain." Jeffrey referred her to a trust attorney who agreed to review the case for a reduced fee. The response was filed before the deadline. It denied every claim and requested an expedited hearing because the challenge interfered with the property insurance, utility accounts, and pending right-of-way negotiations. The court set the hearing for late July. Then Logan called the local newspaper. The article appeared online on a Monday morning. Carrie printed it before Caitlin reached the store. The headline read, "Lawrence Family Challenges Secret Property Transfer." A photograph showed the orchard entrance and Richard's farmhouse. Caitlin's toll house appeared in a smaller photograph below it, leaning behind the cedars. Logan was quoted as the family representative. "Our concern is that my grandfather's memory is being exploited through documents no one knew existed. This isn't about taking a home from anyone. It's about protecting what he built and making sure decisions attributed to him were truly his." Christine's statement said, "The family welcomed a fair public review." Derek confirmed that Richard had relied on others for business decisions. No one mentioned that Derek had inherited the orchard through a will signed years after the trust. No one mentioned Christine's private offer. No one mentioned the quit claim. Carrie placed both hands on the counter. "Give me his number." "No. I only want to explain exploitation to him." "No." "Then give me the reporter's number." Caitlin folded the article. "I'm not answering through the paper. They've told the whole county you took advantage of your grandfather. They haven't told the court. They're telling people before the court can stop them. That's why they did it." The bell above the door rang. 2 orchard suppliers entered, saw Caitlin, and became interested in a display of work gloves they had passed every week for years. The public part had begun. By afternoon, Caitlin had missed calls from 3 unknown numbers. One was the reporter. One was a real estate buyer. The third left no message. She drove to the cottage after work. A paper notice had been stapled to the post beside her chain. It warned that ownership of the parcel was under legal dispute and that entry could constitute trespass. The notice had no court seal. Logan's property office appeared at the bottom. Caitlin photographed it before removing it. Derek's truck approached while she was unlocking the chain. Christine sat in the passenger seat. Logan was behind them in his own car. They had come together because the newspaper article had made retreat harder. Christine wanted Caitlin to see a united family. Logan wanted to witness the result of the pressure he'd created. Derek wanted to know what Richard had written. Caitlin closed the chain behind her and remained on her side. Christine lowered her window. "We should discuss this privately," she said. "You already discussed it publicly. The article wasn't meant as an attack. What was it meant to be? A clarification. You called Grandpa incompetent. We asked the court to determine his condition." Derek signed a statement. Derek stepped out of the truck. "I signed what I remember. You remember him being unable to understand a deed? I remember him hiding decisions and depending on other people. Did he understand the will that gave you the orchard?" Derek's face hardened. "That's different. How?" "It was recent. It reflected the business as it existed when he died, and the trust reflected what he wanted when he created it." "You don't know what he wanted." Caitlin felt the letters inside the cottage behind her. She thought of the sentence Richard had written about not refusing loudly enough. She could have brought out the black box. She could have shown Derek his equipment loans in Richard's handwriting. She could have given Christine the page describing her requests for land money. Instead, she kept her hand on the locked chain. Logan stepped closer. "If your documents are real, show us. You filed before asking to see them. We asked through the petition." "No. You made claims through the petition." Christine opened her door. Caitlin, we can still settle this. Withdraw the challenge. We need assurances. You need the land. That isn't fair. You offered me $25,000 for the toll frontage because you knew the bridge project was coming. Derek turned toward his sister. What bridge project? Christine went still. Logan answered for her. The state has corridor plans. Derek looked back at Caitlin. How much did they offer? She said nothing. The three of them stood on the other side of the chain, and for the first time, they were no longer united. Derek understood that Christine had acted without telling him. Christine understood that Caitlin had found the state's interest before signing. Logan understood that his research had exposed more than his mother intended. Then Christine looked toward the hidden cottage and made her choice. We'll let the judge decide all of it, she said. Derek could have stepped away. He didn't. Yes, he said, we will. Caitlin unlocked the chain, opened it only far enough for herself, and walked through. I'll see you at the hearing, she said. The courthouse hallway was crowded on the morning of the hearing. Orchard workers stood near one wall. Two people from the newspaper waited beside the courtroom doors. Christine sat with Logan and their attorney. Derek sat beside them, though a small space separated his chair from his sister's. Caitlin entered with her attorney. Isaiah carried a file box. Carrie held her handbag against her knees. Jeffrey had brought certified records in a leather case. Stephanie waited outside because she'd been called only to authenticate the state's offer. When the clerk opened the doors, Christine stood first. The hearing began with the family's attorney arguing that secrecy itself proved something improper. Richard Lawrence concealed this transfer from his children, used an unfamiliar family name, and paid for extensive improvements without ordinary business records. The judge looked over her glasses. Are you saying secrecy invalidates a deed? No, Your Honor. We're saying it supports the incapacity and influence claims. Then show me incapacity. Derek testified first. He said Richard had relied on him for orchard operations. He described missed appointments, misplaced tools, and arguments about equipment costs. Caitlin's attorney asked one question. Did you accept the orchard under a will Richard signed years after creating this trust? Yes. Are you challenging that will? No. Why not? Derek looked toward Caitlin. Because the orchard was always intended for me. And the 12 acres? I didn't know they existed separately. That wasn't my question. Derek's mouth tightened. I don't know what he intended. Christine testified that Richard had become secretive. Under questioning, she admitted asking him to guarantee one of her property loans. She also admitted offering Caitlin $25,000 for the toll parcel before telling Derek about the bridge corridor. Logan testified about finding the Ashford filing. Did Caitlin direct you to it? Her attorney asked. No. Did Isaiah? No. Did anyone alter the county record after Richard's death? Not that I know. Jeffrey took the witness chair next. He walked the court through the chain one document at a time. Richard had severed the 12 acres, signed the deed before a notary, recorded the trust, paid its taxes, and filed later maintenance statements as trustee. Was there any break in title? The judge asked. No, Your Honor. Any mortgage from Lawrence Orchards? No. Any conveyance back into the estate? No. How long did this arrangement remain on record? 15 years. Isaiah opened his box. He produced receipts for roofing tin, heart pine flooring, windows, plumbing parts, wire, paint, and fasteners. Each carried a date. Many included Richard's handwritten initials. Photographs showed the cottage changing year by year. The family's attorney held up one receipt. Mr. Fisher, you benefited financially from this secret project. Isaiah adjusted his glasses. I'm still owed money. A few people laughed. The judge quieted them. Did Caitlin know about the work? The attorney asked. No. Did she influence Richard? She didn't know there was anything to influence. Why did you keep it secret? Because Richard hired me to repair his property, not announce it at Christmas. Carrie was the final witness. She described Richard standing in her store after Michael's funeral, holding coffee he never drank. What exactly did he say? Caitlin's attorney asked. He said he wouldn't let the family erase his granddaughter. He said if anything happened to him, Caitlin needed to find what was under the door. Christine looked down. Carrie continued. Richard had returned over many years for maps and records. He discussed the toll road clearly, remembered dates, corrected errors, and drove himself to the store. Did he seem confused about Caitlin? Never. About the property? No. Did he tell you the cottage existed? No. Richard could be perfectly sound and deeply annoying at the same time. Even the judge smiled at that. Richard's letters were admitted with the trust papers. The court read the pages describing Derek's equipment loans and Christine's requests for land money. Derek's face lost its color. Christine stopped taking notes. Stephanie entered long enough to identify the written state offer, the corridor studies, and the independent appraisal. Did Caitlin cause the state to select this route? The judge asked. No. The preferred approach was designated years before Richard's death. Did any party in this family cause your office to value the easement? No. The state's interest didn't prove the trust, but it explained why the toll frontage had suddenly attracted attention. It also showed that Caitlin hadn't invented the value after the dispute began. The judge called a short recess. Nobody spoke in the hallway. When court resumed, the judge ruled from the bench. The petition offers suspicion, but no credible evidence of incapacity. The recorded documents, later filings, restoration history, and witness testimony show a deliberate plan maintained over 15 years. She upheld the Ashford Trust, confirmed Caitlin as successor trustee and sole beneficiary, and dismissed the challenge. The toll parcel passed separately under the will, she added. Its low tax assessment does not diminish the devise or transfer it to another heir. The gavel came down once. That was all. Outside, Logan began answering the reporter's question until Christine stopped him. Derek approached Caitlin near the courthouse steps. Those letters make the orchard look unstable. Is it? No. Then stop moving debt between machines and prove it. His eyes shifted toward Isaiah. You could have told me, Isaiah said. Your father could have told you too. Derek looked back at Caitlin. What are you going to do with the letters? Keep them. Will you give them to the paper? No. He hadn't expected that. I'm not trying to damage the orchard, she said, but I won't sign away land to protect your decisions. If you need access across mine, you ask. If I need orchard records affecting my boundary, you provide them. Derek nodded slowly. It wasn't an apology, and she didn't pretend it was. Christine waited beside her car. When Caitlin passed, she said, I was afraid of losing everything I'd built. So, you tried to take what Grandpa built for me. Christine's eyes filled, but Caitlin didn't move closer. I'm sorry, Christine said. I believe you're sorry now. What does that mean for us? It means you don't bring me forms. You don't send Logan to watch me. You call before you come. We can begin there. Christine accepted the boundary because there was nothing else left to negotiate. In August, Stephanie met Caitlin at the toll house with the final easement agreement. It protected the building, created permanent public access from the new pull-off, required repair of construction damage, and included the $210,000 payment. Caitlin signed at the old table. What happens to the toll house during construction? She asked. We brace it first, Stephanie said. Your contractor can coordinate with ours. My contractor is outside arguing with your drainage crew. Through the window, Isaiah pointed at a survey stake while two engineers listened. Then they've met, Stephanie said. The payment cleared Isaiah's receipts first. He protested until Caitlin showed him Richard's list. After that, they repaired the foundation, straightened the porch, replaced the damaged roof, and restored the false sill. Caitlin left the hidden cavity intact. It no longer held Richard's key, but it remained part of the house. She turned the main room into a small woodworking and repair shop. Isaiah taught weekend classes there when his own business was quiet. Carrie supplied coffee and sold locally made preserves from a cabinet near the door. A historical panel explained the toll road, the creek crossing, and the original charter frontage. The newspaper proposed a line for its follow-up story. At the will reading, the family laughed at her $6 toll house. Its false sill held a home key. Caitlin allowed the line in print, but not on the historical panel. The building had been there long before the Lawrence family argument, and it deserved more than that. The panel ended with Richard's name among the people who had preserved it. On the final Saturday of August, Caitlin carried the last box from her car into the cottage. The box held bakery aprons, 2 chipped mugs, her father's pocket knife, and the folder she had used as a pillow on her first night at the toll house. Isaiah installed a hook beside the front door. Carrie stood in the kitchen, arranging plates that didn't need arranging. You're both allowed to leave, Caitlin called. Carrie opened another cupboard. We're checking for mice. There aren't any mice. That's what mice want you to think. Isaiah hung the iron key on the hook. Derek came by that afternoon with a crate of late peaches. He called first. He left them on the porch and stayed for one cup of coffee. They spoke about the bridge work and nothing deeper. It was not forgiveness. It was a visit conducted under rules Caitlin had chosen. When everyone left, she walked down the gravel path and locked the cottage gate. The restored toll house was visible through the trees below, its cream trim bright in the evening light. A state crew had finished the pull-off, and 2 travelers stood reading the historical panel. The place was useful now, so was the money. Neither mattered as much as waking, without wondering who could order her out. If stories about young people rebuilding a life after family betrayal matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. Caitlin returned to the cottage as the light faded. She stepped onto the porch, opened her own front door, and touched the old iron key hanging beside it before going home.